now we're going to move on to Nick Horspool, who is a risk specialist at GNS, and he's going to talk about RiskScape. Over to you, Nick.
Kia ora koutou, ko Nick Horspool toko ingoa. I'm from GNS Science, as Belinda mentioned. So in our project, immediately after Cyclone Gabrielle, after discussions with NEMA and other key response and recovery agencies, we identified the need for collating risk information and helping make that available for key stakeholders and end users to make risk-based decision-making in the response and recovery from the event. We've seen this in other events where this information is often disparate and not available, and so we want to try to address that following Cyclone Gabrielle. Now, we did that by leveraging an existing project called RiskScape, which is a model that we've developed in New Zealand for risk assessment for natural hazards and climate change, and it's been funded over the past decade by MBCIF. So we were really able to leverage all that existing science and work that we'd done in the past decade and apply that to this project. So we had two key components in this project. The first was collating risk model information. So the risk model was combined of both hazard data. So what is the hazard event that occurs? Oh, can you please go back to the original slide? And we were able to bring in information from the landslide project that Kerry talked about, as well as MB Endeavour, flood modelling projects, and bring that into the RiskScape platform. We then used information from some of the event response databases that Jochen talked about. So we brought in information that included the post-disaster surveys and tagging information of damaged buildings. And we were able to develop an exposure database of buildings and infrastructure at the individual asset level, so the individual building level. We then combine that with information on how those hazards impacts those buildings and infrastructure to allow the model to produce estimates of life safety risk, as well as the reinstatement costs to buildings and infrastructure and downtime of buildings and infrastructure like Charlotte talked about. Now, this model was multi-hazard, so it included landslides, floods, coastal inundation, earthquakes, and tsunamis. We really wanted to make sure that the risk information that was being portrayed was not just what happened in the event, but actually what we would need to think about in terms of future risks as we move forward over the next, say, 100 years. So it was multi-hazard, multi-impact lens. We also included a temporal component, so there was elements of climate change and population growth into the model as well. So we could look at the risk not just now, but actually into the future. We then built these risk models and put them onto the RiskScape platform, which is an online cloud-based system where users can run models and visualize the outputs, which you can see on the right side of the slide. So we could assess the impacts at a property level as well as aggregated to suburbs and regions. The model then could be used to evaluate the what if. So not just accepting what we have with the current risk, but what would happen if we, in the recovery, actually made some decisions to mitigate risk. So, for example, what if buildings that were repaired or rebuilt had a higher floor level for future floods, or potentially retreat from certain areas of high risk? The model could then be rerun and the community impacts could be re-evaluated to quantify the benefit of those mitigation measures. I'd just like to also say thanks to EQC Tokatuako, who helped co-fund this project, as well as the funding from MB. Next slide, please. So the key outcomes of this project was an online system where users such as central government agencies, local government, and other users could access this risk information and make some of those risk-informed decision-making elements. Next slide, please. So the key outputs is really this online tool, RiskScape. So this can be made available at riskscape.nz. There is currently a login required for that. So if anyone is interested in access, please contact either Ryan from NIWA, who's one of the project leaders, or myself, and we can provide login access. There's also a report which summarizes all of the risk models and how that information was brought together, as well as how the tool can be used. That'll be available very shortly on the Extreme Weather SIF project website. Kia ora.